This is Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a home birth mum of 2 little boys, a doula in Melbourne supporting birth at home. I'm a mental health nurse and the co-creator of Home Birth Victoria. If you want to learn more about me, the podcast, or my work as a doula, check out www.birthingathome.apodcast. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. This is the 60th birth at home story, and it's shared today by Racheal in Victoria, who's a mum to 2 babies, both born at home. Growing up, Racheal, like many people, thought home birth was a bit woo-woo. Meeting her home birth husband, now paramedic, they began on a home birth journey for their 2 babies, choosing private midwifery care. We also chat about the emotional experience of the baby when it is born, its transition to life outside the womb, and the impact of social media on perceptions and understandings of birth. Racheal also shares her experience with home birth after significant perineal and clitoral tearing. Remember to rate or review this episode on Spotify or Apple if you enjoy it, and of course, please share it with others. Enjoy. Welcome, Racheal, to Birthing at Home, a podcast.
Thanks, Elsie. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself, maybe give a bit of better background, who you are, who's in your family, where you're located, that type of thing?
Yep. So I'm Racheal. I live in northeast Victoria, which is very lovely and warm at this time of year. And I live with my husband, Liam, and our 2 little boys, Paddy, who's nearly 6, and Johnny, who is 2.5.
Johnny is such a cute name.
Thank you. I like it.
And so you originally reached out in March, and now it's November. And by the time this episode comes out, I was just counting ahead. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be January, I think, 2025. So it's a long time coming. But when we just sort of touched on this before we started recording as well, but you used to work as a nurse, is that right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, cool. How long were you a nurse for?
I started to say it and I don't remember.
That's all right.
A bunch of years.
That works. And so what I'm curious about is, so you both, Paddy and Johnny, were both born at home. How did you come across home birth?
Look, my initial my ideas of birth. Look, growing up, I really liked birth. I was always really interested in it. Loved watching One Born Every Minute and all those. I'd watch that with my mum.
Yeah.
Loved it, but now I can't stand watching it.
Of course. Yeah.
It changes a little bit. But yeah, really was really fascinated by birth. Wanted to be a midwife. Thought I'll do my nursing first and then I'll do my midwifery. And then when my husband and I ended up just working as a nurse for a few years. And I was planning to do midwifery one day, but hadn't got there yet. And then when Liam and I were thinking about starting family, he said, I don't know exactly how, but he said, have you thought about home? But he was born at home.
Oh, wow.
So his mum had 4 kids and they were all born at home.
Yeah, amazing. In Victoria?
So he was in South Australia.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or it might have been the last one, might have been in Vic. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Amazing. But I think it was a pretty good home birth community in Adelaide back then.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it is now, but it's going back a while. And so she was pretty passionate about it, but I just didn't really think much of it. And then Liam suggested it, and I certainly wasn't against it. We did have one family friend who had home birthed, But I remember thinking she was like a bit woo-woo growing up, and I think we got invited to her like mother blessing when we were teenagers, and I was laughing at the invitation because it had a painting of a squatting woman birthing a baby, and me and my sister were like, oh, we're not going to that baby shower.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
It's just a bit woo-woo. But also, you know, this friend is Julie Bell from Blissful Births.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I didn't really know much then, but now obviously I love and adore her and very much respect her. But so that was kind of my only perception of home birth. So then when Liam said it, suggested it to me, I was like, look, it's, you know, it sounds lovely, but obviously if something goes wrong, you want to be in hospital. And he goes, oh, look, why don't you just research it? Like, just have a look into it. And he knows that I like to research, I guess. And I really thought that I'd go away and do my research and come back to him and be like, look, here's the evidence. We're better off in hospital. And I went away and, like, really researched it, like got really stuck into it.
Yeah.
And just trawled through my nursing databases and Liam's work databases and just went a little bit nuts, looking at heaps of different studies, and came back to him and I was like, okay, it's safer at home. So we'll do it at home.
Yeah.
And I think the funny thing looking back on that now is that, like, I actually only was looking at infant mortality. That was the only, like, measure of whether it was safe or not as well.
Wow.
Which even so is in some studies the same as, in some better at home, never worse.
Yeah.
But that was the only marker that I was interested in before I ever gave birth.
Yeah.
And now I think those other markers, like, you know, maternal outcomes, are just so important as well, and I just hadn't really given it much consideration, I think. And I think partly that's you grow up hearing all these women who've had all these things happen in childbirth, and you're like, oh, well, they're okay now, so whatever happens, I'll be all right. And they're not actually okay.
Yeah.
As you get older and you start having these conversations with them, you're like, oh, you're not okay. You're not okay. And you're not okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's changed since then, looking at that. But yeah, so I decided, okay, this is actually safer, which was a big shock to me. And of course, Liam was quietly celebrating.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good though. And that's so interesting. That was the thing that you were looking at, like, the neonatal mortality, because it's so much bigger than that. But, like, I am pretty confident when I say that most people would be thinking the same way as you were.
Yeah, I think so. It's like the only thing that I could that I thought was relevant, to be honest.
Yeah. That's absolutely wild. I mean, there's so much I could say on it. I've recently been doing a lot of thinking and, like, reading into like trauma for babies and, like, the emotional experience of babies being born and whatnot, and, like, that's never considered about in terms of outcomes. That's not even, like, measured. So
no, just as what I was reading when you called, I was getting stuck looking through birth photos and all sorts of things. And I was reading this. Oh, now I'm not going to be able to find it. I said that.
That's okay.
Yeah, here we go. Just a quote from the I don't even know what documentary it is. I shouldn't say that. I don't know where it's from.
I can find it.
But a documentary that I was reading, I'm sure. And this father's talking about when his son was born and how, you know, they just picked him up and rubbed him all over and everything, and how he was really distressed watching it. And he said, he was talking about how she picked him up like a chicken, basically, and just, like, rubbed a towel all over him, like a hard, scratchy towel, and then and he's just reflecting on how that experience is for the baby. And he says, if he is born in a cozy home in the warm arms of his parents with skin-to-skin contact, the message he receives is, it's worth being born. The world is warm and receptive. But if he's born and separated from his parents, it's a beginning marked by the need for survival. It just, like, gets me.
Yeah.
I read
like
that.
it's just
it's so full on.
It's just wild. I was talking with colleagues last night when I was at work, and they also were like, oh yeah, like we never thought about that before. And I was like, yeah, because nobody does. Nobody does.
No one.
Babies are just like these little creatures that have no feelings and no emotions, and they just cry and they don't know any better. But that's not true.
No, and why do we need to make them cry when they're born?
Yeah.
Like, I know no one's whacking them anymore, but like, why is it that's what makes us feel good when they cry? Because we're like, oh, good, they're breathing.
Yeah.
So we just think they have to cry. So whatever we have to do to make sure they're crying, rub them down, whatever. It's just like, why? Why is that the goal? Make them cry the moment they come into the world. Like
little bobbers. So you looked at the research and learned home birth is safe. Amazing.
Yeah.
And so what's the like where you are in terms of midwifery care?
Yeah. So we were in the Yarra Valley at the time.
Oh, okay, cool.
For our first. And there's actually quite a few private midwives around in the area, sort of eastern suburbs and then the Yarra Valley. So we had quite a lot of choice, but when we decided, I went straight to Julie. Yeah. And I was like, all right, who should where's a good midwife?
Yeah, so good.
And she pointed us in the direction of Yarra Valley Midwives. Okay, cool. And that was... two midwives, Lisa and Robbie, working together. Yep. And I know like one is primary, one's secondary, but at the time, I think maybe their caseload wasn't as big as it became later. And so they were both at all of our appointments and everything. So that was really lovely. Yeah. I don't think I even really knew who was my primary until the paperwork afterwards and stuff. So it was really, really lovely. So we went with them and it was really good.
Yeah, amazing. And like... during your pregnancy, did you like do any particular education or like did you have to work on any particular fears around like home birth? Like, you know, even though you'd done this research and you'd figured out that like home birth is safe, like did you do any extra kind of stuff?
Look, our midwives did sort of bits of education at every appointment, obviously, and so that's really how we did it. I read quite a few books, listened to heaps of birth stories, which I still do, even though I'm not having any more babies. And what else? We did, this is terrible that I can't remember this, we did a birth preparation course that wasn't so much about like physical preparation or preparing for labour as much as it was sort of like emotionally preparing or mentally preparing. And it was a woman, I feel so bad that I can't remember her name. Yes, I can. Emily Mortar.
Okay.
And I can't remember her like title or whatever.
That's okay. That's all right.
She came to our house for a weekend course and did this with us, just the two of us. Yeah. And it was really lovely to do that. But yeah, to be honest, I didn't really have fears once I'd looked at the research. I was like, good. Yeah. That's all I needed to know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't know a great deal probably about, well, I thought I knew a lot about birth then, probably didn't know as much as I could have. But I'm kind of, in some ways, I'm glad in a way. I think if you're going into a hospital birth, you've got to be so equipped with all of the knowledge and all of the, you know, ready to fight your case. Yeah. But I didn't have to fight and I knew I wasn't going to have to fight. So, like, I was informed, but I don't know, I didn't feel like I had to have this bank of knowledge. Well, in the hospital, like,
so many things can be offered or happen to you, and so you have to, the knowledge that you have to have going into a hospital, no matter kind of what birth you want, you need to know so much information. But obviously, like when you're planning a home birth, I mean, some people like to have an awareness of like hospital things in case they need to transfer. But like otherwise, generally, like if you're not going to be in a hospital, you don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of epidurals and like, you know, for as an example. So that makes it a bit easier, hey?
Yeah, exactly. My sister was pregnant at the same time, so we had our first babies 5 weeks apart.
Wow.
And she was having a hospital birth. She's since had 2 home births, but her first was a hospital birth. And, she really had to fight, like really hard. And she definitely equipped herself with lots of knowledge, sort of as much as you can when it's your first. And again, this is 6 years ago. There wasn't actually a lot like on social media about home birth, probably very little, I would say, 6 years ago. Or at least that we were aware of, or maybe our algorithm didn't have it. I think
it's definitely, I mean, even like, so Murphy's 4.5. So like even at the start of 2020, I feel like, there were no podcasts like specific to home birth then. Podcasts, I think Australian Birth Stories was still quite new. So even that was like pretty, you know, fresh. And in terms of like Instagram and things like that, like I think Instagram has changed a lot over the past however many years. And like I definitely don't remember really getting any education from Instagram, but I feel like now everyone's posting about everything to do with the birth world. You know, there's accounts set up like fully like posting like I mean, people are live streaming their births. Like,
yes.
I don't think that was happening a few years ago, you know?
No, absolutely not. I think I actually got Instagram while I was pregnant.
Yeah.
It makes it feel like a really long time ago, or makes me sound really old. But and I remember, I think I pretty much was just following like Julie's Blissful Herds account. She had some videos. And like little birth videos, but I think there wasn't much else. But I loved watching those videos, and I felt like that actually gave me a lot of confidence. There was something that she said to me while I was pregnant with Patty, which I'll never forget. She said, like, if you're going to do something like go bungee jumping, you're not going to get there and do it if you've never seen it. You've never seen anyone do it on a video or in real life. You've never seen anyone bungee jump. You're not just someone's going to go, well, tie this around your ankle and you jump off. You're not going to do it. Or if you do, you're going to be like ridiculously terrified. And women are now, pretty much all women are getting to birth and they've never seen anyone give birth, which historically that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not. It's sort of a very new thing for women to be arriving at their own first birth, having never seen a labour and birth.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in the culture that we live in, I think birth videos are the only real way to counter that. And that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the training stuff that I'm doing with Rhea Dempsey, she is always on about like in birth videos, it often doesn't actually specifically say like what number birth it is. And also like sometimes, or a lot of the time there's, you know, really beautiful music over the top. So it can also be a little bit misleading, you know.
Very much so.
But I agree it is very powerful. And so did you like get any... Like, did anyone, like, you know, colleagues or anything like that, like, express any concerns about you having home births? Or planning
yeah, for sure. Yep. Definitely colleagues. They were pretty... They tried to be good about it, but there was definitely a lot of, oh, you're so brave, or not a chance, like, I would never do that, or... comments that I don't think anyone specifically said the whole like there's no medals for going drug free or anything, but it was definitely implied like, why wouldn't you just, you know, what are you trying to prove something, like you don't have to, or you'll end up going to hospital, just wait and see, like a lot of that kind of thing. Like well-meaning people, but definitely a lot of that. So I don't know, if anything, I think it just made me more determined.
Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah.
But it can definitely have, like, those kinds of things, I think, can definitely have a negative effect on people.
Yeah.
If we're not careful what we say to women who are...
Yeah.
I did have, actually, my husband's boss, she said to me, what did she say? Oh, I was very big, like very big.
Yeah.
My belly was huge. At 22 weeks, I was at the checkout and a lady said to me, "Oh, any day now, love."
Oh, my goodness.
No, I'm halfway. So I was really huge. And I also just stacked on the weight everywhere when I was pregnant both times.
Yeah.
But yeah, my boss's wife, my husband's boss, said, she goes, "Oh, this baby's too big. Like, that's going to ruin you coming out." She's like, you probably should have married someone small."
Oh my God. People are so ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it's probably too late, but okay, I'll keep it in mind.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was just, but you know, I was fortunately able to laugh it off.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, there was a bit of that. My family, I found out later, were quite nervous for me, but they were really, really, like, my mum was really beautiful. She didn't tell me she was nervous. She was like, it's her choice. Yeah. So she was at the birth, but she told me afterwards that she'd been really, really a bit quite stressed about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know that, so that was good.
Yeah. So she was at the birth of Paddy, was she? Yeah.
We had heaps of people.
Oh, really? Who did you have? Who did you invite?
We had a bit of a party.
That's brilliant.
We had my mum, Liam's mum, my sister, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, Julie, who sort of was acting as our doula. We had our 2 midwives, and we had a student midwife as well, who she was doing a double degree nursing midwifery, so she'd been working with me at work, and they have to, obviously, get up a certain number of births, and so she asked, "Oh, can I follow you?" And I said, "Sure, but I'm doing a home birth. Is that all right?" So that was really good. And is that everyone? That's everyone for the first one.
I think that's 9 people in total.
9 people, that's
including
right. Thank you,
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we have more at the second.
Oh, that's so good. And like leading up to like labour, did you have like any like worries, or was it like, was your pregnancy like pretty chill, or what was that all like?
It was a pretty good pregnancy. I mean, compared to the stories that you hear. Obviously felt pretty nauseous for the first trimester. And no, it was pretty good. I found work really hard when I was pregnant. We just didn't really get breaks very often, or if at all often. In a shift we'd go without a break, and sort of I was on a pretty busy general medical ward while I was pregnant, and it was just sort of felt like I was running the whole shift and not sitting down. So I ended up finishing at 34 weeks, which I remember feeling really like weak about.
Yeah,
I just felt so weak for it. Because, so many women work right up till baby's born, or 38 weeks, or but it got to 34 weeks and I just felt like there's no way I can keep even just showering people and bending and doing all sorts of stuff. And I was like, I just can't do it anymore. It was also summer.
Yeah, wow.
And one of our lovely older nurses, she was just like, why don't you just stop? Like, she goes, you're not going to regret it. Like, you're not going to regret having
I wish I worked longer.
Of relaxation. And it was so good. It just felt like it gave me permission to just go, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. And
then I spent, from 34 weeks to 40 weeks just enjoying summer and swimming in the river and
amazing,
doing nothing really, which was so nice.
Yeah.
And I think now, gee, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
What a luxury.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, me too. Yeah, that's amazing. And like, did you have like any signs that your body was preparing for labor or?
No, not that I was aware of, not that I noticed. I'm sure there were, but I didn't know what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And Paddy was due on Christmas Day.
Wow.
Due on Christmas Day. That's in inverted commas, obviously. And I went into labour on Christmas Day. So
wow. Yeah.
that was Christmas night. But yeah, no signs really. I didn't know what I was looking for.
Yep.
And then Christmas night we were at my parents' place, and after everyone went home, and I think my dad wanted to watch a movie, so I think everyone else went to bed. I think it was my dad, myself and Liam, and we stayed up watching Notting Hill because it's my dad's favourite movie.
Okay, sure, yeah.
And so, yeah, we were just sitting there watching it. It's I don't know what time it was, and I was sitting on the exercise ball, birth ball thing. And I remember just feeling like I had my hands on my belly, and I kept thinking, gee, it's just going really rock hard. But there was no pain, but it would just go really rock hard kind of intermittently. And I honestly didn't think anything of it. You hear all the time that women just don't, kind of, they're in denial at the start of labour and stuff like this. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder whether we do it because we're so conditioned to not make a fuss, or to don't want to be dramatic, don't want to be, so sometimes I think we just kind of I wonder if I kind of knew, but I was just, oh no, it's nothing. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to, it's just a bit silly really. With my second, I was like, yep, it's happening.
Yeah. I mean, that is so true. I think, at least for me personally, I feel like my hesitation has also been around the restrictions that are in place, that a midwife can only really be there for a set amount of hours kind of thing, or
okay, yeah.
When my waters broke or started leaking with Frankie, I knew that I would be on a timer, and so I knew, well, I'm not going to tell them because I don't want to be on the clock, because I don't believe in the clock. So that doesn't matter because the system works on the clock. So I think that also influences, but I also feel I mean, even what you said about working and feeling like you were weak because you couldn't go on working whilst you're literally growing and carrying a human being. And also, I mean, that's so typical of nurses, I feel, as well, as that we're looking after everybody else and we're such givers, but we can't even for both of my babies I worked up until 38 weeks, so
wow,
so I think that's a really interesting point. I had not really thought about that.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I just sometimes I feel like so many women are just really no, it's nothing at the start. And I don't know. I wonder if we really were taught to actually listen to our bodies and not be worried about what other people think, or worried about bothering someone, or maybe we'd just be I'm pretty sure this is labour actually, guys.
Yeah.
But anyway, I at this point I was pretty oblivious. Maybe I was slightly hopeful that it was something, but I didn't really think much of it. And I hadn't realised that Liam was watching me out of the corner of his eye as well, and had realised that I kept putting my hands on my belly, sort of. And then he said to me, "What's going on?" I was like, "Oh, my belly just feels really hard, every now and then." So he just quietly started looking at the clock. And I also got up to go to the toilet about 8 times just for a wee during the movie. And I didn't even think oh, that's a bit much. Like, I just didn't really think about it, and I kept getting up, and my dad would pause the movie, and Liam, after like the sixth time or whatever, was like, stop pausing, just keep playing.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking, we've got to get home. We lived about half an hour away, and he's like, we should get home soon, so we'll finish the movie faster and go home. And I just remember being annoyed and thinking, that's rude, not pausing for me. And, anyway, we ended up, the movie finished, and I went to do goodbyes, and Liam was like, let's go home now. And it wasn't till we were probably pulling in the driveway at home that it started to feel like really just like period cramps, but it was the first like pain.
Yeah.
And I think that was when I was like, oh, this kind of, I can feel a bit of pain. And he just goes, Rach, you're in there.
Oh, that's so good.
And I was like, no. But anyway, we went inside, and I think I had a bloody show pretty soon after that. I really don't know much. Like, I'm not good with the timings of anything because we just didn't really look at the clock, and no one mentioned the clock for the whole thing.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm very fuzzy on the times, but I've got a few things from the midwife notes, but not much. And I don't know what's first stage and second stage or like really. It's just, to me, it was just started around 9 o'clock at night and went for this amount of time. Yeah. So we were home by ourselves for a while, and then sometime in it must have been, I think, the early hours of the next morning, maybe.
So this is Boxing Day?
That we called, Boxing Day, that we called my mum and my sister. Very fuzzy. And eventually everyone was called.
Yeah.
And, I don't know by what time everyone was there, and I don't know what time we called the midwives either.
Do you remember, having quite a few people present? Do you remember being aware of all of the people, or like were they physically like, with you, or were they kind of just like watching, or like who was your main support? Do you remember?
Mainly was Liam and my mum.
Yep.
And the others pretty much were all pretty in the background. And our midwife, who was our primary midwife, Robbie, she would, come in and give me some help when I needed, and she helped me with a few different positions and stuff like that. But it was really bizarre and very different to my second labour in that I feel like I was almost out of it the whole time, like in a good way. Just on another planet. It went for about 19 hours, and I don't think I opened my eyes more than 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
And not intentionally. I just was in another zone, and, I'd put my arm around someone, and walk me to the toilet for a wee, and I'd have my eyes closed still, sit down and wee and walk back. Just really was quite out of it. Just felt like I was on another planet, really, which was pretty cool. I do remember feeling shocked by how intense it was, and I think that probably, as you said, the videos are not enough preparation to realise how much it can hurt, because I know that there are people who have pain-free births and stuff. It was not my experience.
No.
But like, I'd read stuff about people saying, oh, it's like a marathon, and I thought, oh, that's fine. Like, I mean, I haven't run a marathon, but it's okay. I've run 20 Ks before. That's okay. That's almost a half marathon.
Yep.
I can do that. Like, that's fine. No worries. It's a marathon. It's just about endurance. And people would say, oh, it's more about pressure than pain, and more about endurance than actual. And when I got in it, I was like, no, this is pain.
Yeah.
This is definitely pain.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was no one there making me feel stressed about it. And so I think there was no point that I thought this is not a normal amount of pain. Like, it was definitely the worst pain I've experienced, but there was no point that I thought something's wrong or this is not normal, just because everyone around me was really relaxed. My midwives were really relaxed about it. No one was doing, cervical checks or telling me how long I had or that they were worried about anything. And so it was pretty nice, really. I shouldn't say nice. If you had have asked me in the moment, I wouldn't have said it was nice. But looking back, it actually feels really nice to remember it.
Yeah.
Just because it just felt very, I don't know, like surrounded by everyone who was looking after me. And so that was, it was pretty cool. I remember coming out of the toilet at one point and I did open my eyes and saw the sun like really quite high up in the sky out the kitchen window. And I just remember thinking for a minute, why is the sun up in the middle of the night? Because I still thought it was that first night, but it was sort of more than halfway through the next day. I mean, I just wasn't aware of the time at all, which I'm really glad about because I think it made the whole thing a lot easier, actually. So it was really good. And I got pretty exhausted by the end, and when I hit what I think was probably transition, I got pretty aggro. And I think I said, I don't know if I said shoot me or I want to die or something really like just really full on dramatic. And I remember just thinking like fantasizing and be like, someone just put a gun on my head. Like that would just be so good right now. And I obviously verbalized this in some way, and my midwife was like, she was so beautiful. She was like, just think about your beautiful little baby. And I remember thinking, I don't care about my baby. I couldn't care less about my baby.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So, look, I think that was probably transition.
Yeah, I think safe to say transition,
But no one had mentioned, for my whole pregnancy or anything about, going to hospital or an epidural or a C-section or anything like that. So it wasn't even, like, it didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
I think if we had have talked about that at length, we talked about, in an emergency there's a transfer or whatever. Yeah. But if we had have had that conversation at length, I think that might have been an option in my mind, like, oh, well, let's go. But it just didn't occur to me, which I think was really good as well.
Yeah.
Not that, So that was, it was
But
great.
you can see, I think, like, for people listening, like, as well, that you can see that in a hospital setting, if you're in this intensity and if you call it pain or whatever, but you're literally saying, for me personally, I remember definitely thinking at the end, if I ever have to do this again, I'm just having a C-section. And, you're thinking of saying, just shoot me.
Shoot me.
Like if someone
had have said, do you want a C-section?
Yeah.
Obviously I would have said yes.
Yeah, it would have been pretty goddamn tempting, Like, and if, like, it just, you can see how you're so vulnerable in that state. I think that's really funny though.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I know it.
Did you use like a birth pool or like TENS or anything like that?
Yep. So we had a birth pool set up in the lounge room from, I don't know, pretty early on.
Yeah.
It was just, we were in a little tiny 1-bedroom rental, so it kind of took up half the living space, the birth pool, and people would come over and be like, what's the story?
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny. And I used the TENS, which I didn't use it the second time because I didn't find it helpful, but I know lots of people swear by it. So I think it's just each to their own kind of thing. But I found that I got, even though I don't think it was making any real difference, I kind of fixated on it and got a bit obsessive about it. So each time a contraction would come, I remember if I couldn't find the button, I'd be like to Liam, where is it? Where's the button? Where's the button?
Yeah.
Just because I had to find it and then pressing it and almost not really feeling it.
Yeah.
But it just became something that I was trying to control. And I think that's the other thing, is the temptation to just want to try and control it can come out in any way and in whatever way it's given to us. So if maybe in hospital, if someone had have said, should I do a check and see how far along you are? It's like, yes, even though I didn't want that, I probably would have jumped at that. I was jumping at the, desperately wanting to push the button and just control something. But no one, I said to Robbie at one point, our midwife, I said to her, how much longer? And, she could have said, well, we can check and have a look. But she just said, we can never tell, Rach. We can never tell. And again, I remember thinking, well, you're not a very good midwife. And actually, I'm sure she could tell roughly how much longer, but it was just the best answer, really. Yeah. Like, it was with so much love, and it was just, it doesn't matter. It's not about that, And when I said I can't do it, they were like, well, you are doing it, you are.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know, they said all the right things for me, and they were so loving, and it was just really beautiful. So I think it was about... I don't know. I got really, really, really exhausted at one point, and our midwives suggested that everyone pop out for a while, just go down the street, and they tucked Liam and I into bed, and they left as well. So it was just us home, which was really nice. And the goal was that I sleep, which I think I was kind of having like little micro sleeps in between contractions, but they were pretty frequent. And I remember every time I woke up with a contraction, like hitting Liam and being like, wake up. Like, I'm doing this, you're doing it too. And then just out of nowhere after this sleep, I said to Liam, I sort of sat up and was like, I need to get in the pool. So got back. I had been in the pool earlier, so I got back in the pool. And then I don't know what it was, but somehow I just had this sense of urgency that I wanted everyone to come back. That I wanted my mum to come back.
Wow.
But Liam took that as obviously all the people who were meant to be there. But I was like, where's mum? And so the midwives arrived back first, and I just kept going, where's mum? Where's mum? And Lisa, one of the midwives, was really beautiful, and she obviously just recognised that I just really needed to know. So she called mum, and she was like, she's 10 minutes away, and then she'd say, she's 8 minutes away. She's 5 minutes away. She's pulling in the driveway.
Oh, that's so sweet.
She's coming in the door. Open your eyes. There's your mum. So it was really lovely. And then when she got there, I think I was just like, right, good, baby. I can do this. Yeah. And my waters broke. Just going back and forth. My waters broke, I think, about an hour before he was born in the pool. So I must have got in about an hour before.
Yeah.
And my waters broke pretty quickly after that, which I just felt as this like almighty pop under the water. It felt like someone had like popped a balloon inside me, which is, I guess, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
But it was just the most bizarre feeling, and I didn't know what it was or what to expect. And I was like, something popped. They were like, good. And then after that, to be honest, it got way easier. Like, I know that's not how it is for everyone, but that I guess second stage for me was really, really quite relaxing. And it's so hard to explain this. I've tried to explain this to people. I know people talk about like not intentionally pushing, your body pushing, and that happened with my second, but with Paddy, I mean, I guess my body did push, but I couldn't feel even my body pushing. Like I could feel him just coming down and out. And it was like I just stopped doing anything and just sat there.
Wow.
And he just came out.
Yeah.
And, yeah, the pain for that whole second stage seemed to go away, the pain of the contractions. And, I mean, in the video, I'm smiling.
Wow.
Like sitting there. Like I look kind of stoned, but I'm like...
Yeah.
Oh,
wow, that's so interesting.
And yeah, super weird. And I still don't know what exactly was going on there. But his head came out, and this bit wasn't particularly pleasant. I did tear pretty badly. So when his head came out, I felt that, and you can see like I'm sort of smiling and looking all blissful, and then I just like kind of screamed for a minute. But it's so quick, you know, and then that bit's over, and you kind of stop feeling it or thinking about it while the rest of baby is born. I say that because someone said to me when I was pregnant, oh, I felt the tear so badly. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, my mum had told me, you know, all of my life, oh, but, you know, you're not thinking about that. You don't even really feel it. Don't worry about it. And then she said, oh, I felt the moment that I taught. And I just was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But so many women.
But really, it's over so fast.
Yeah, and so many women do say that, oh, I was sure I tore, or I thought I tore, or it felt like I tore, or I was really worried that, you know, this and that. And then it actually turns out that they either didn't tear, or what they thought had happened wasn't even as bad as they had thought, you know. I'm sure it goes the other way as well, but I think I think in birth stories and like just like amongst us in the community, like when you're telling stories, that there can be a bit of focus on like, this fear around tearing, but like you're not sitting there being like, oh my God, like because your baby's being born, like,
right? I know.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think especially if you've got that oxytocin, you're in the right environment, then, you know, that happens, and then it's like, well, I'll cross that bridge later. I'm having a baby now, and it was like, it was great. And he came out, and my midwives were sitting off to the side, and everyone was just sort of sitting a bit back from the pool, and I picked him up and put him on my chest, and he was a bit of a go-getter from the start. He was sort of like came out with his arms like fists punching in the air and looking around, and which is the opposite to my second, but that's their personalities as well. Wow. But he didn't cry straight away. He had one of them had the cord around their neck, but I can't remember which one. I think it was him. Yeah. I think it was him. So looped it off. And, you know, he's looked quite blue, and I think if I hadn't watched quite a few birth videos beforehand, I might have gone, freaked out. He's blue. Yeah. But he was totally fine. And, yeah, he was like very vigorous, even though he didn't cry, and was looking around. It was really cool. And then we just sat in the pool for maybe an hour or so, and just held him, and found out that he was a boy, and told everyone his name. And then people brought me food, and I ate this beautiful lamb stew in the pool. Oh, wow. Actually, we've got this photo, I think maybe when Liam was holding Paddy, and my mum's like spoon feeding me, and then his mum comes over and is spoon feeding him. And this is a photo.
Oh, that's beautiful.
All being
fed as you should be. As you should be.
Yeah. It was very funny. And yeah, so it was really lovely. But after a little while, I was pretty uncomfortable from the tear, and was losing quite a bit of blood just from the wound, not from like
placenta or anything.
Placenta. Yeah. And so I mean, they can't tell in the pool what it's from, but they figured that out later. I think it was after an hour they suggested, they could tell I was a bit uncomfortable and the water's sort of going a bit cooler.
Totally, yeah.
And so they suggested that I stand up and we'll see if the placenta will come out. And it was really, really cool. My midwife said, we're just going to squeeze a spot on your shoulders and your placenta will come out. And I remember just thinking, well, that's kind of funny. They're like pretty confident about that. It wasn't like, we'll do a pressure point and we'll see if it will help. They were like, we'll just do this and your placenta will come out. And they did, and it came straight out.
What? Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, we're injecting women all the time, and there's apparently this pressure point that just drops your placenta.
Oh my goodness! Wow,
which was pretty cool. I don't know if it works every time, but
it worked for you. Yeah, it worked. Yeah, surely that's step one before the synthetic oxytocin. Surely,
there's so many things like that.
Oh my goodness,
a bit wild. So yeah, so that was. Yeah, that was really good. And then they helped me out of the pool. And I remember the midwife said to our student midwife, she was like, can you help her over to the couch? And something she said that just really stuck with me and made me feel like very cared for was, I mean, you'd know as a nurse, we're always told, if someone falls, don't catch them. Step out of the way, don't catch, which totally makes sense. We've got to protect our backs and all that sort of stuff. But she said, don't let her fall. If she falls, catch her. And she goes, we're not in the business of letting women drop to the floor. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, they would catch me. Like, so beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, I walked over to the couch and had the placenta in a bowl, and then I think by that point they realised that the bleeding was coming from the tear. So I think it was about 300 mils from the tear that they estimated.
Yep.
So they were like, we should probably repair it now or examine it. And so we did that, and they were really lovely, and they let me have Paddy like on my chest. But after sort of partway through, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was in quite a bit of pain, and I was just passed him to my sister. And there's a very beautiful photo. She's got an 8-month pregnant belly, and Paddy's sitting on her belly, and she's got the bowl of placenta here. It's a gorgeous photo, but she's so squeamish, and it was like a 40-degree day. And she said afterwards, I'm sitting there pregnant, squeamish, in 40-degree heat. We had no air conditioning, with this bowl of placenta there. She's like, it should have been really lovely, but I was just trying not to be sick.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
But, it was fine by me.
Yeah.
I was quite oblivious, poor thing. So the midwives asked if we had something we could use for better lighting to do the suturing. And Liam goes out to the shed and brings in his big painter's lights.
So good.
Which are like extreme, very like theatre lighting.
Yeah.
So I think the repair took about 2 hours. It was pretty.
Wow.
It was pretty complex.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like third degree or anything. It was the tear, the perineal tear was only first degree, I think, but then tore at the sides.
Wow.
Both labia and then clitoral hood tore.
Wow.
And a bit internally as well.
Yep.
So it was pretty messed up.
Yeah.
But just so for everyone listening, my midwives said it's a very unusual type of tear. They have only seen it one other time, and my mum had the same type of tear with her first.
Oh, interesting.
So I suspect it's probably something genetic or anatomical or something. So
wow.
I just, whenever I say, I really don't want to scare
disclaimer.
people.
Yeah.
That it was unusual, and that, statistically you are far less likely to tear at home.
Yeah.
And the best thing about the fact that I taught at home rather than in hospital was I got this beautiful care. and 2 hours of like these two beautiful midwives like working so hard to work out the best way to put everything back together. And they were so beautiful, and they were talking about, you know, being mindful of like how they put it back together so that it wouldn't be uncomfortable, so that it would, you know, wouldn't affect pleasure. Like they were just really like beautiful about it.
Yeah.
And my mum was sitting next to me. She was all teary while they were stitching me up, and she just, because she had the same tear but in hospital, private obstetrician who, yeah, I mean, her tear has caused her lots of complications in her life. And she just was crying. She just said to me, I would have remortgaged my house for this kind of care, like if I knew that this was available. Like,
wow.
Yeah, so that was, yeah, it was really beautiful. And then the postpartum care for me around the tear was so beautiful as well. Like I did have a pretty rough recovery because of it. But they were just, like, I've never felt so well cared for that it just, I don't know, it kind of cancelled out the discomfort and the pain and the stress of it was just like countered with this like incredible care. So it was just so, anyway. It's just so
but
beautiful.
like I think also that like, well, yeah, number one, you're less likely to tear like in a physiological birth. But number two, like if you're gonna tear, you're gonna tear. Like it's kind of like you can try and stop it or prevent it or reduce the chance of a particular type of tear, I guess. But like if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And like the care that you want, like it's not because of home birth that you had a tear, but the care, like that could have easily have happened in hospital as well. And the care would have been, like your mum had reflected, like so completely different.
Stitch you up. Yeah. Here's some frozen pads out the door.
Probably a bunch of randoms as well. Yeah. So that's definitely amazing. And then a bunch of randoms as well for the follow up and the postpartum care and the care of it as well. Yeah. If you were in hospital.
And I mean, I would have probably been taken to theatre for it as well, for the repair, and then not seen, who knows how long it would have been between seeing Paddy again.
Yeah,
like, just
so many things.
It was just really lovely staying there in my lounge room.
Yeah.
And then they tucked me in on the couch and helped me with the feed, and we sort of tried a bit of the breast crawl, which he made it to the breast and then just fell asleep.
How much did he weigh?
He was just over 4 kilos. 4.1 maybe.
Yeah.
Just over.
Cool.
So it was really, really lovely.
Yeah. And then so you had quite a gap between Paddy and Johnny. Did you have like any hesitations like in choosing home birth again, or like was it always going to be a home birth?
It was always going to be home birth. I think once you've done it once, I don't know that I've ever heard of someone who's gone for a hospital birth. Unless there's some sort of very serious complication. Yeah. I just couldn't imagine it. Well, I shouldn't say that. I did say at one point, I was like, well, we know what we're doing. Like, we could save ourselves some money, go in and just tell them to kind of F off and leave us alone. But also, there's that vulnerability, and if you're in there, like we were talking about before, I don't want to have to fight. I don't want to have people coming in and going, oh, yeah, I know, but we just like to check, and then having to have that conversation. I wanted to be able to do that whole eyes closed, not thinking about anything, just protect that space again. And who knows what I would have said if I was in there and someone was offering things or like. Yeah.
And at the end of the day,
I like to think I would have said no.
It's not your space, and you can put as many signs on the door as you want, and you can tell all the midwives and all the obstetricians and all the registrars and all the cleaners and all the students, you can tell them don't come in. But at the end of the day, if someone's concerned, they 100% are going to come in, and they are 100% going to make calls based on their observations, not on what you're saying or what your wishes are. But in a home birth, it's your space. You're in charge. Like, if you really wanted to, you could tell everybody to leave. Like, it's your house.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so had you moved away, like, by this point?
Yeah. So we were up here by then. And one of my, like, I guess, caveats for moving was, like, we have to make sure there's a good home birth midwife in the area. Or see whether Robbie and Lisa can travel.
Yeah.
And they were so, so lovely when we talked to them about it. And they said, you know, yep, we will, like, you need to let us know way in advance, obviously. But we can. But, of course, there's a big chance they wouldn't make it as well, which probably it definitely wouldn't bother me now. Probably at the time I felt more like I needed them there.
Yeah.
But there's only one home birth midwife in the whole of Northeast Victoria. So that choice was easy.
Yeah.
We ended up deciding, like, we were like, let's just go with the midwife who's local. That way we'll also meet some other home birth parents in the area maybe. Like, you know, we've heard good things. We'll just go with her. So we did that. And, yeah, that was good. I think the last episode of yours that I heard, and I'm not sure if it was, haven't been doing them in order because I'm hopeless, but I think it might have been recent. I think it might have been, her name might have been Joey.
Oh, yeah.
Or it might have been someone else who said this. I might be mixing stories, but was talking about a midwife that she didn't connect amazingly with.
I think it might have been Joey.
She requested another midwife.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a similar situation. Like, you know, have a lot of respect for this midwife, and clinically very competent. Definitely couldn't fault her, but it just didn't feel the same as, you know, as with my first. And I think as the pregnancy went on, I started to feel more like, well, maybe I don't actually need a midwife. And my only concern with that, I would have 100% just free birthed. And, I mean, where we were before in the Yarra Valley, we were sort of 40 minutes from a hospital. Here we're 2 minutes from a hospital, even though we've moved room. But, so, I mean, I would have felt very comfortable with it, except my concern was if I tore again, I just didn't want to go into hospital afterwards with a tear, potentially a complex one. I didn't trust them to repair it, to be honest. I didn't want to deal with people, you know, scoffing a bit about a home birth that needed to come in. And I know that they don't always do that, but there's definitely plenty of stories where that's the case. And I just didn't want to get up and leave my house after having a baby.
Fair.
So we stuck with our midwife, and we ended up saying we'd really like to just try and do it on our own. And she was really respectful of that. And we said, I think it was probably about 30 weeks or something that we said, we've got a little small, like, front lounge area at the front of the house. And we sort of said, how would you feel about us setting up in there, you know, setting you guys up in there, and then we'll just call you in if we need you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I said when we need you. And she was like, sure.
Wow. Yeah.
So we did that. And that kind of, I was really happy with that. And in my mind, you know, I might have just called them in for a peri check at the end, or suturing, or so it was really, really lovely that she was like, well, that's what you want. That's fine. And, I mean, it ended up being that I asked her to come in once in the labour.
Wow.
Because I think it was probably transition. And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah. Did you have? Did you say before that you had quite a few people at Johnny's birth as well? Yeah.
Yeah. So Johnny's we had again my mum, Liam's mum, and my sister. Yeah. We didn't have a student midwife this time, and because our two midwives were not really in the room for most of it, they were sort of not really there. So it didn't feel like, I guess, more, but it was. And then we had a really good friend of mine and my brother who was he's a videographer. So
wow,
he was doing the video.
Amazing, yeah.
Because I was like, I actually do want a good video this time.
Yeah.
And his wife, who does a bit of photography sort of as a hobby, and she's amazing. Yeah. So they did the videography and the photography, which was really cool to have.
Yeah.
And yeah, they a lot of people were like, you had your brother at your birth. But he's just gorgeous and very respectful and lovely, and they were just very in the background.
Yeah.
And
but it comes back to really, that, you know, sexualization of women's bodies. Like, he's not there. Like, he's there to do a job, like
absolutely.
To video. So I think, yeah.
Absolutely. And he's like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I know what to expect now. Like, when they have kids, it's like, this is so good. And so my sister had his wife. So his wife, Georgia, who did the photos. My sister then had her at both of her home births as well. So she's now been to 3 home births. Yeah. And she's like, I'm definitely having a home birth, which is just cool. Love a good convert home birth. So it was a bit of a party again, but they were all coming from like 3 hours away. So it was also like, we didn't know if they would make it. And everyone says, oh, your second baby comes quick, which it didn't really, not that quick. Yeah. But and Julie as well.
Yeah. Okay. So you had like roughly 9 people, not including you, but not including the midwives. So 11 people in the house. Oh, but then also was Paddy around? Where was Paddy?
And Paddy. Yeah,
so actually 12 people in the house.
Yeah.
Did you do any?
We were like, this house is a bit bigger. We can fit more in.
Did you do any preparation with Paddy about like being present for the birth?
Yeah, we did heaps. We did lots and lots of just lots of talking to him about it. He was 3.5 when Johnny was born. We watched heaps of videos together and just talked about them. He became pretty obsessed with birth, which was very adorable. And a friend crocheted this beautiful doll that gives birth, and then has a placenta and everything.
Whoa,
so he would play with this doll, and we'd like act out the birth.
Wow.
And we did we set up the pool as well, and I showed him what noises I might make, and we just talked heaps about it. And he was really, really he was very prepared for it, I think. Yeah. So it just didn't faze him at all, which was really good. He was very excited. And he would talk anyone's ear off about what was going to happen, how it was all going to go. Cute. And he was like, there's going to be blood. It's good birth blood. And what would he say? He would say, it's good blood, like a period, not like hurt blood.
Oh, my God, so sweet. Oh, the new generation.
So, I know, yes.
That's so good.
So he was pretty all over it, actually. And he would, I've got hilarious footage of him in one of his nap times, and I just was peeking in because I could hear weird noises. And then I poked my camera in the door, and he's sitting there. He's got his doll, and he's pretending to birth it, and he's holding it down between his legs, and he's bringing it out while he's grunting and moaning. And he would act out these little births all the time. It was very cute. So he was very all over it, which was good. And I think, so my mum and my sister were kind of looking after him, and I don't know when they got him out. It was nighttime when I went to labour. It was about 8 o'clock. So he was in bed already.
How many weeks roughly were you?
So I was 41 and 4. 41 and 4, yeah. So I thought, Patty came on time. I'll probably come early or on time again, but it doesn't work like that. It just kept ticking, and I remember getting a bit sick of it. And I had really psyched myself up to be like, I'll go to 43 weeks. I don't care. I heard about a friend of a friend who'd gone to 43 and 6, I think. And I was like, yep, I'm not going to rush. I'm not going to be too keen. Doesn't matter, whatever. But by the time I hit about 41 weeks, I was like, no, I'm so done. And I did then I started doing the gutter walking and I had sworn to myself that I wouldn't do it. I'd just relax and let it be. But I did it anyway.
So over this.
I got sick of it.
Yeah.
And I really, towards the end of my pregnancy, I was keeping my house fastidiously clean, because I just wanted it to be clean when I went into labour. And of course, I've got a 3.5-year-old. So I think a big part of it was I was just sick of chasing after him and trying to put everything away straight away. And I was like, hurry up, baby.
Of course.
So went in, would have been, actually, I'll quickly say I had an iron infusion at about 38 weeks, I think. And had to go to, because it was so late, I'd left it so late, went to a little tiny local hospital up in Yakandanda for that, or local clinic. So drove sort of an hour for this little place that did an iron infusion. And then while I was having it felt like they stranded me, because I was having the infusion, and this obstetrician comes in who I hadn't booked in to see. And she's like, right, when we do iron infusions, we always come and have a consultation with you. We always make sure you see an obstetrician when we do that. And I was sort of like, all right. I mean, sure, I didn't sign up for this, but okay. So she comes in and she just starts palpating my belly and everything, and sort of okay. And she goes, gee, it's huge. And I said, yeah, I have pretty big babies. That's fine. She just went really, she was quite forceful almost. And she was like, well, how big was your first? And I said, just over 4 kilos. And she goes, right, at home? And I said, yeah. And she goes, so shoulder dystocia? And I was like, no, it was fine. So she just you could see her just trying to sort of plant little bits of fear. Yeah. And I think if that was my first, that could have really freaked me out. She's like, well, it's measuring 3 weeks ahead. I was like, that's fine. Whatever. So anyway, she ended up kind of just giving up and leaving. But I just thought that kind of stuff can really shake people, I think.
And you just gone there.
I know, for an
iron infusion. You don't need some unsolicited advice or opinion from, and that's not evidence, but what she's saying is not evidence-based. So
not at all, no. And actually I read a study a while back. The outcome of the study was that big babies don't cause more complications, but when the provider thinks it's going to be a big baby, there are more complications. So obviously interventions that lead to complications. Yeah. So even if, because, obviously on scans they're so inaccurate and people get told they're going to have big babies all the time and they're not big at all. Those, they put all of the ones where they were expecting big babies in a research group, and they found that there were more complications in those ones than when they weren't expecting them, even though sometimes they weren't expecting the big babies and they were big. So it's really just all about, fear.
Yeah, because you're meddling. You're trying to fix like something that you've predicted, but like nobody can tell the future. Like nobody actually can tell you 100% certain anything.
No.
So
no.
How many weeks did you say you were when you had that experience?
I think it was 38 weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think once you've had one home birth, you kind of like, oh well.
Yeah, and maybe she recognised that as well. And she's like, nah, she's lost cause.
Yeah. I'm not going to win with this
wasting my time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, she kind of gave up and off she went. She did ask if we could do or not ask. She was like, okay, well, I'd like to do a third trimester ultrasound. And I was like, no, I only had the 12 week, I think. 12 weeks.
Obstetricians must be very stressed people.
Oh my goodness, I know. Actually, I saw, because with my first as well, they do a backup hospital booking in case you're transferred, just so they have your details and stuff, which did I do it second time? I think I must have. But the first time with Paddy, I remember going to that, and so you see an obstetrician because you're a home birth. So obviously they've got to make sure a doctor sees you. And the doctor was just terrified. Like I could just tell, she was so stressed the whole time. She was stressed that I hadn't done the GBS thing. She was stressed that I hadn't done the glucose tolerance test. She said, well, look, we just don't know anything about your baby or you. And I said, what would you like to know? I can tell you. She says, well, we don't know whether, you've got gestational diabetes. And I said, well, I don't have any symptoms of it. So, it's probably fine. And I actually did the HbA1c with my first. And I was like, that's fine. So probably not. And I said, I don't really mind if I do, because if he has low sugars when he's born, we'll just make sure we get some good breast milk into him. And I've got a bit of colostrum if we need it, and he'll be fine. And she was just freaking out. And this whole time we're having this conversation, she's trying to find, she's got the Doppler and she's trying to find his heartbeat, and she can't find it the whole time. It's just like, must have been 10 minutes of her trying, and she just can't find it. And then at the end of the conversation, she goes, where do your midwives usually find the heartbeat? And I was like, oh, just down here. And she goes, oh, there it is. And I was like, you're an obstetrician. Like, my midwives would put it on. They'd pretty much look at me, put it on, and get it first time. Because, every time.
That's the beauty of continuity of care. Like, you get to know each other, and they get to know your body, and oh my goodness. Wild. Absolutely wild out there.
Pretty intense.
Did you have any signs of labour in the lead up to labour with Johnny?
Yeah, I think I had a couple of days of sort of Braxton Hicks, if we're going to call them that, tightenings, I guess, just quite painless, but just felt the tightening, and I kind of knew what that was this time. But when it started, I was like, righto, here we go, and then it wasn't. But, a few days of that, and it would happen whenever I would go for a walk, and I was getting pretty frustrated by this point. But I do think a part of it is with when you've already got one child, you really, I think somewhere in there you're waiting for the right moment that they're ready, and they're, I don't know, probably often in bed, or you don't have this list of things a mile long to do, whereas with Paddy, nothing I had to do by that point. Finished work, I'd relaxed for 6 weeks. And then it was probably about 8 o'clock at night, and I'd been for a big walk that afternoon on my own. I'd said to Liam, I'm going, I need a walk. And I'd walked all around the town, just everywhere. And I just felt like I needed to take my shoes off in the park and just walk along by the river. I just had this really, I don't know, this moment. And then walked all the way home and got Paddy into bed, and it was probably about, then I said, I'm going outside to walk in the gutters because this has to happen tonight. I'm really done. And so I did that, and I'm sure it was happening anyway because it, like, straight away when I came inside from that, I think it was really just the fact we'd put Paddy to bed and he was asleep and everything. And then friends dropped in, which was lovely, and they were sort of standing in our kitchen just talking to us, and I'm standing there thinking, I know what this is. And I sort of paused talking for a while, and they were like, are you okay? And it's like, yep, no, fine, just a bit uncomfortable. But I just really, I knew at that point I didn't want to say it to them. I just was like, no, I need to just be with us. And I think they clued on, and they ended up leaving. And then, pretty quickly it was on, but I was a bit unsure whether I should call. It was really hard to know because everyone was 3 hours away, and sort of we thought, we need to call them as soon as things are happening. Yeah. But at the same time, if they come 3 hours and it's not it, that kind of isn't ideal. So I said, just hold off just until we're really, really certain. I was pretty confident, but I thought I could very well go to bed and then wake up in the morning. You do hear of that happening. So I tried to lie down, and when I couldn't sleep and I was like, nah, this is being interrupted by contractions, I was like, no, okay, that's it. And I said to Liam, all right, call them. And he goes, I already have.
Liam's so good.
So, he's all over it. Don't tell him I said that. But, so then we sort of just went around the house, and we had heaps of candles everywhere and lit all the candles. Beautiful. And we just set it all up and brought the pool into the living room, and it was really nice because we had those few hours with just us as well. And then everyone started to arrive, which was really fun. I really like it. I know that people talk about birth being unobserved, and that's really true. But I think if you've got people who you feel that safe with and that comfortable with, then it can be as though it's unobserved as well. And so, and I also find it the excitement of that really helps me too. Having them over. And of course, knowing that they're staying as well for a couple of days because, these are people that live 3 hours away who I love dealing. So they're all, arriving one by one, and it was really good. I don't know times really, but I definitely was not in that really blissed out state this time. I feel like I was a bit of an angry labourer this time. I don't know really what I was angry at, but I do wonder if it's a little bit of being just more confident as a person. I've been a mother for 3.5 years at this point, and you kind of I think it kind of toughens you up a bit and makes you a bit less worried about, I don't know, people's perceptions. And I just really was like, this hurts and I'm going to let everyone know. And let everyone know exactly what I wanted and how I wanted it. And, if this person was touching me in this way and I didn't like it, I was like, no, this arm, no. Very assertive. And Liam said he was sort of doing that light touch on my back, and he said if he got below a certain point, halfway down my back, I would just slap his hand away. And I remember the feeling of it, feeling like I could feel that vibrating all through inside around my pelvis and around the baby every time there was any touch around my hips or anything.
Okay.
And people walking on the floor. I don't know if he was maybe in a unusual position or something, because people walking on the floor next to the pool, just the vibration of that was quite painful. I could feel everything for a while there, not for all of it.
How interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, super weird. Just like all the sensation was really heightened. And I did say at one point, can everyone just go? I said it to Liam, can you just get everyone to go into the other room for a bit? Just because it was literally just the movement was feeling really, really horrible. And then I asked the midwife to come in, and she was in with us for probably, I don't know, maybe half an hour to an hour. And she helped me. I was like, okay, what positions do I need to get into? Because I really just need this. I don't think I articulate it like this, but I remember thinking I just need this baby to move because however it is really, really uncomfortable. And so she helped me with a few positions, which were good. And then I was like, cool, I'm done now. Like, I don't know how I said it, but somehow politely was okay, we don't need you anymore.
You can go now.
And she was good about that. In both my labours as well, I threw up a lot. And in Johnny's, I was checking I was putting my finger inside and checking because I just really wanted to know, like, have an idea of whether I could feel anything.
What's happening,
which I think I was just a bit more aware, and I think I definitely preferred being a bit less aware with Paddy, but I also think there's an element of, being, for me, I think, like, once you're a mum, you're just always going to have an awareness that you maybe wouldn't have just in general.
Of course.
So that's just how it was. But I remember checking lots, and I could feel, at one point I could feel, I don't remember what I could feel, but I could feel something that gave me some idea of, okay, baby's there, but it went for hours without moving. Like without moving down at all, and I just was getting really pissed off. This baby is not coming down, and that just was really, really frustrating me. Just did heaps of different positions, and eventually he did, because they do.
That's how it works if you wait long enough.
I know, but I think, in hospital, and the same as with Paddy's in a way, because while I wasn't checking myself internally, like, the labour stalled for, I don't know, a while in the middle there, and in hospital they would have hung up Syntocinon, and because
or at least been like applying pressure, being like,
come on, let's move.
Remember, you're on this clock. We work on a clock here.
Absolutely. And so and with Johnny's, I was like, there's just no change. I was like, this is driving me nuts. But then same kind of thing, went for a lie down. Paddy's was 19 hours, Johnny's was 10 hours in total. So we almost halved it, which is pretty good, really.
Yeah.
But I was definitely hoping for a bit quicker. But I went for a lie down at one point, tried to lie down. Someone suggested it, and it was the last thing I felt like doing, but I was like, I'll try it. I should try and get some sleep. And it was like within 5 minutes of lying down, it was the same kind of thing. I just shot up and was like, right, I'm getting in the pool. It's on. And I was really scared about tearing.
Of course, yeah.
Not about actually like the moment of tearing, but just that recovery, because it was pretty, it's pretty rough.
And then also having like two little kids, like a baby and a three-nager to like look after as well.
So that was definitely a big fear, and I did lots of work in the pregnancy to try and sort of get to a point where I was okay with that. And I sort of initially was like trying to do a lot of, I'm not going to tear. And then I got to the point where I was like, I might tear, and that's actually okay, because I am okay now. And I will have good care afterwards. And, I think I got to the point at one point, and I just said, well, like, would I do it again to have Paddy? like if I got the choice to go back, would I go, oh, yeah, I'll have that tear again to have him? And I was like, yeah of course I would. So that was probably, to be honest, what made me go, okay, it might happen, just have to, you know, deal with it when it comes. But I also really did, like, I don't know, I had kind of a plan of like, I might try this position and to try and avoid it. And yeah, when my beautiful midwife, Robbie, from Paddy's birth, called me about 2 or 3 days before Johnny was born, and she goes, I'm just ringing to tell you that I had a dream last night that you had your baby and you didn't tear and you were super excited. And I just, like, I don't know, something about that. I was like, okay. And, you know, she could have been too, like, concerned to say that in case I did tear, but she was just like, I just wanted to tell you that this is what I dreamt. And so that was really cool as well.
So special.
So anyway, I was then in the pool, and it was really different. I was sort of kneeling up and leaning on the side of the pool, and totally different feeling to with Paddy. I didn't feel like the ring of fire or anything with Paddy, even though you would think I would have. But with Johnny, definitely felt that, and definitely felt like I didn't intentionally push at all. Definitely no effort there, but I could feel my body like squeezing him out, like pushing so hard. Only a few times really, but the feeling was really intense, and I was quite taken aback by it because I hadn't expected that. And I was holding on to the front of my vulva, like squeezing it together, like so hard, like I put like fingernail dints.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was like, I just don't want to tear at the front again. Like I was like, if I don't tear at the front, that's fine. Like I was like, people tear at the back, that's normal. I can tear at the back. And I was like holding it the whole time he was born. So the poor kid had to come out like this much smaller. Just like shutting off half of the but I was just like, I know. And like the force that they can come out with, like I was like really having to use all my strength. It's so bizarre that I was doing
quite
this.
Impressive.
But I was just holding it. I was like, no. And he came out and it was amazing. Later, Liam said he thought that he had his hand by his face, his fist by his face.
Okay.
But there was no midwife in the room. And no one really looking other than Liam, who was behind me. But afterwards, looking at the video, my brother must have been there because the video is like right there, so you can see. It does look like, it's hard to tell under the water, but it does look like he's got a fist there. So I like to tell myself that anyway. It's just because
and especially, and so did you tear?
Nope, not at all. Not
so
even
especially if I mean, absolutely claim that.
Yeah, I'm going to claim it because Liam thinks it and it looks like it in the video. I sent it to Robbie and I was like, do you think this is that? She's like, it does look like it could be that. So I'm just going to claim that.
Yes, absolutely. Wow.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, didn't tear at all, not even a graze. Although I did kind of like dig my fingernails in so hard at the front.
That's true. That's true. Almost caused
had a bit of a bruise there.
Else. Yeah.
But no regrets.
Yeah.
And brought him up, and I still can't remember which one had the cord around their neck. It might have been him. But I remember looking at him under the water for a minute, and I just wanted to like have a look, and I think I knew a bit more now, and I knew I could sort of just hold him there and look. And I had planned to hold him there for a bit longer and really take a minute to look, but I was just too excited to pick him up. So picked him up, and this is where I think, like, if I was in my kind of nurse brain, I would have probably really freaked out. But I think like instincts are amazing. Didn't even really know I had them, but because we're just really not taught to listen to our instincts at all, or taught that we have instinct.
Exactly.
And picked him up, and he was completely different to Paddy. He was just completely floppy. Like the video is probably quite confronting for most people. He's I can't even explain, absolutely no muscle tone, just head hanging, arms hanging, like completely white, which is kind of worse than blue. You know, my hubby's a paramedic, and he like,
oh my gosh, I feel like that was an important thing to
I missed
put in
all that. I know, I just realised that. Sorry.
That's so good. So he's a paramedic and he was born at home. That's that's wow.
Yeah, I think everyone at his work's sick of him talking about home birth and how amazing it is.
That's so good. He should like go and talk to like all of these different stations and be like, this is how you look after people in labour. And oh my God, that's so cool. He's just
done who's that? He's just done some birth. Sorry, it's my sister calling. He's just done some birth education stuff with, I think it might have been the Fireys, I think, like a training day thing. He's super excited, but of course it's kind of like, it's pretty tricky what he can get away with saying and what he can't, but he kind of goes for it anyway. And then asks for forgiveness later. But he's very passionate about it. But he said, like, even for him being really confident with birth, seeing Johnny born was like pretty hard, because he could see that I was okay with it, and so he was trying to tell himself, she's fine with it. She's obviously knows what she's talking about. But in the video, you can hear him going, like, sort of rubbing his back a little bit and going, little cough, please. Come on, little cough. And I'm just saying, he's fine. He's fine. And he hadn't, like, made a squeak, made a sound, nothing. Just, he was definitely a little bit nervous. And he said afterwards, look, my heart was going a little bit. But he was really calm about it as well, because he just was like, well, I had to take the cues from you, and you were saying it was fine. But he said, look, in, like, as an ambo, that's what we would call a flat baby, which, you know, that definitely requires oxygen, possibly resuscitation. Like, this is like not a good situation. Cord cut over here, all the things, like, and you know, after probably it would have been at least a full minute, and just completely flat, and then he just kind of squeaked and opened his eyes, and then he was fine. Like, it was just...
And that's the transition. That's lungs turned on, and
I know, and
away you go.
And he had all this oxygenated blood going into him through the cord, so he didn't really need to breathe straight away, and he just was really slow to wake up. And his personality, he's been a much more mellow kid than our first. And he just does everything in his own time, and he's just a lot more relaxed. And it was just what he was like. And but I still can't believe, because also as a nurse, like, I would have seen that baby as well. You know, we did, I worked in theatre for quite a while, and lots of C-sections. And, you know, if we pulled that baby out, that would have been alarm bells, emergency, you know, and it was but he was just fine. And I still can't believe that somehow I was that confident that he was fine. Like, that it was there wasn't even in my head, there was nothing that made me even think there's anything wrong. I was just like, I almost couldn't work out why Liam I was just like, he's fine. He's fine. And I just think if we are allowed to, or taught to listen to our instincts, like, it's very likely that a lot of babies who supposedly need all this intervention as soon as they're born maybe don't need any of it, especially if we leave the cord intact. In my niece, who was born in hospital, was my sister's little girl at the same time, or 5 weeks after Paddy. You know, my sister was very, like, very firm on she wanted delayed cord clamping and everything, but they'd completely ignored her, and she's got video footage and she's saying, don't cut it, don't cut it, don't cut it, and they cut it literally while she's saying don't cut it, and they passed her baby for a second, and she's screaming, like baby is screaming in the video, but because they'd seen some meconium, they took baby, suctioned her in her mouth, and then they were like vigorously rubbing her down with this towel, which I just think on their skin that's only ever felt water must feel like sandpaper, like must feel awful. And you just think, like, she didn't need suctioning. She was screaming.
Yeah.
But anyway.
It's crazy, like, how different the experiences are. And, like, again, it goes back to that clock thing. It's like everything's based on a clock. Mm-hmm. And, like, these kind of, you know, it's a pretty magical thing, birth. Like, seriously, like, it's, you know, there's so much that you can't control, and there's so much that you can't even, like, explain, really. Like, there's some things that we still don't understand why it happens like that. I mean, like, the variation in labor, like, no labor is ever the same. Like, it's just, yeah, I mean, that is magic. Like, and I think, the respect that, like, a baby's not going to instantly be born and immediately, like, you know, it's not a, like, baby giraffe. It's just not going to, like, get up and start running around. Like, that's not what we are, you know? It takes a moment. And even, like, with, like, baby animals and stuff, you know, when you see animals be born, you often see, like, the mother, like, trying to, like, stimulate or, you know, licking them and, like, you know, but you don't need to, like, I mean, it's wild. And I'm so glad that, like, you were able to have that experience because, with Murphy, I guess I had a somewhat similar experience, is that he didn't take his first breath for like 54 seconds, I think the video is. Mm-hmm. And my midwives did clamp the cord and then go get the oxygen. And by the time they'd gotten all of that, he'd started breathing, but the cord was already clamped. And it actually just doesn't make any sense to me.
Is that at home?
Yeah, that was my first home birth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a publicly funded home birth? Like a
no.
Oh wow.
No.
Okay.
I have big babies, so
doing that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have big babies too, so I definitely wouldn't be allowed in any of these publicly funded programs now anyway. But that was my first experience, and that fed into a lot of anxiety for like the second time round, because I was like, well, I don't want that to be happening, you know?
For sure.
Yeah, like the respect that like transition is normal, like I think still needs to be worked upon, even in private midwife land.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are private midwives and private midwives as well. Like I don't know, like as I said, this midwife wasn't in the room, so she didn't know any of that was happening. But our previous midwives had, like, they had all obviously their resus equipment, but they had also, like, they had a big wooden chopping board, and they were like, if we need to resuscitate, we balance the chopping board on the edge of the pool to keep the cord intact while we resuscitate. So even if they have to full resuscitate, that cord was staying intact. Like, so they're just like, that was how they did it. But it doesn't make sense to cut their oxygen supply.
No, it just like
when you're needing to give them oxygen.
I mean, that's been a great cause. I mean, I could literally go on for hours about how frustrating that experience was, but I'm just, it's so beautiful that you were able to have that experience, and that your husband was also able to like step back and trust you and like, what was your postpartum like?
Oh, it was amazing. I couldn't believe that it could be that good. I was just I probably pushed it because I felt so good. But I remember between having my two boys, I remember seeing like photos of women after they've given birth, like sitting up on the bed and just crying and just being like, they could sit up and hold their baby. I couldn't sit up for probably a couple of weeks. I had to lie or I could sort of waddle. But just seeing them sitting like right up, and I was like, they're sitting on their bits. Like, oh my gosh, they're doing that. Yeah. And the day after Johnny was born, I was actually the same day, was born at about 5 a.m. in the morning, and later that day we invited some friends around because I know that like lots of people like to do their newborn bubble thing, but it's not us.
You like a party.
Yeah, we had people over, and I have this photo of myself sitting up on a wooden chair. I'm not recommending this, but sitting up on a wooden chair holding him, and I sent it to my first midwives because we still like are in contact with them quite a bit, and I was like, look at me sitting up straight after having a baby. I really couldn't believe it. But I did, after probably a few days, I felt like, I probably should like lie down and just stop. But it was excitement. It wasn't and I knew that you're meant to do like as much time horizontal as you can when you've just had a baby. But I was just on such a high from it. I couldn't believe that I felt so good afterwards. But it was really good recovery, and it was really beautiful seeing the two boys together, and that was just like the best time. And Liam had quite a few weeks off, which was really nice. And Brilliant. we had quite a few of the people who were in our birth team stay for a couple of days. And then my family came up and stayed in a caravan park around the corner, which was really nice. It was great. And I mean, it was really different, just because different baby as well, and breastfeeding is different with two different kids, which no one told me. I thought, well, I know how to breastfeed now. I've done it for 2.5 years. I can breastfeed, but it turns out it was just as hard the second time. But got there, but just so different. They're so different.
Different little people.
They are. The one other thing that I was going to say, with Johnny, the placenta had a velamentous cord insertion, which we didn't know till afterwards because we didn't have the 20-week scan. And I'm just kind of glad we didn't know. I don't think it would have particularly worried me, but like my midwife said, it's not really an issue if no one pulls on the cord, so it's fine. Yeah. And they can make such a big deal of it in hospitals, I know. But I mean, if you don't pull on the cord, apparently it's pretty fine. So we didn't know about till afterwards, but it was fun to see, just something different. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your two amazing home birth stories.
I think
we had like a lot of good little chats in between as well. I think there's lots to learn and reflect upon, and I really feel like Liam should go and teach all of the paramedics about home birth.
He's working on it. It's really crazy. There are so many of them that are so scared of birth. Like really scared. He will say most of his colleagues, like when there's a birth, they're like, oh no, I don't want to go to this. And I just think, especially if you're calling paramedics for a birth, it probably means everything's actually going really well because it's happening too fast. So like everything's probably going perfectly. But, it's just like, it should be so exciting, but they're just really, really scared of it. And I just think we all kind of think, they'll know what to do. They don't necessarily. And anyway, so there's definitely a lot of work to be done there.
Lots of room to improve.
Yes.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to say or that we hadn't talked about or forgot to mention?
Oh, I don't think so. I just really think that I hear a lot, like, you should birth where you feel safest, and if that's in the hospital, then great. And I used to think that, but now I just think, well, why do we feel safest in the hospital? Like, and we might feel, if you do feel safest, that's great, but statistically you're not. So it's very hard to say that to someone, but I just, like, you're just safer at home. How do you, I just want to shout it from the rooftops. Like, if everyone could experience home birth, I actually think people's whole journey as like a mother would be different, to be honest. Like,
I think it would really change society, to be honest. But we've got a long, long way to go. But yeah, your story will be out there now, and add to hopefully motivating and inspiring other women to consider or choose or carry forth with their home birth. So thank you.
Thank you, Elsie.